Welcome to the Praxis Core Module 1, Writing and English Grammar. This Praxis Preparation Series is sponsored by TLC Tutoring Co. and Arkansas State University. What are parts of speech? Parts of speech are a labeling system for classifying words. Words do not have a fixed part of speech. The part of speech is determined by how a word is being used in the sentence. Parts of speech are important for standardized tests because many common grammar errors result from using parts of speech incorrectly. The first of the 8 parts of speech that we will review are nouns. A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. The primary function of a noun in a sentence is to act as the subject, the person or thing performing an action, or the object, the person or thing being acted on. Common and proper nouns. Common nouns refer to people, places, and things that are not specific. Common nouns should only be capitalized if they are the first word in a sentence. Proper nouns refer to specific people, places, and things. Proper nouns should always be capitalized. In the chart below, you'll find examples of both common and proper nouns for each type of noun listed. Note that for ideas, there are very few examples of proper nouns. Possessive nouns. Possessive nouns are nouns that show ownership. Singular possessive nouns show a single person or thing owning something else. In this situation, the apostrophe is placed before the S at the end of the word. You'll note in the first 3 examples, boy's game, dog's bowl, cat's toy, the apostrophe is before the S. This indicates that one boy owns the game, one dog owns the bowl, and one cat owns the toy. Plural possessives show that something is owned by more than one person or thing. In this instance, the apostrophe is placed after the S at the end of the word. In the 3 examples, you'll note the boy's game, the dog's bowl, and the cat's toy. In each instance, the apostrophe is placed after the S, indicating that multiple boys own the game, multiple dogs own the bowl, and multiple cats own the toy. The second of the 8 parts of speech is the pronoun. A pronoun replaces a noun to avoid repetition. It also shows possession or ownership. Pronouns must have clear antecedents. The antecedent is the word to which the pronoun refers. In the example sentence below, John washed John's car, you'll notice that the second use of John's name was omitted, and instead we said John washed his car. His replaces the repetitious name, John, and shows possession or ownership of the car. A common error that you will find on standardized tests is a vague pronoun reference. A vague pronoun reference is a situation where a pronoun does not have a clear antecedent. In the example sentence, you will note, Alice and Mary are coming to dinner, and she is bringing dessert. The pronoun she does not have a clear antecedent, so we don't know which of the women will be bringing dessert. To correct this problem, replace the vague pronoun with a noun. Alice and Mary are coming to dinner, and Mary is bringing dessert. Another common pronoun error that you will find on standardized tests is a pronoun antecedent agreement error. This error occurs when pronouns do not match the number of their antecedents. The example sentence reads, John or Mike will bring their truck to help you move this weekend. Assuming that John and Mike own two separate trucks, the sentence would need to be revised to replace the word their with his to show that each of the men owns a separate truck. Pronoun case errors. The case of a pronoun refers to how it is used in a sentence, as a subject, an object, or to show possession. Pronoun case errors are most common in sentences with a pronoun and a name. In this situation, an easy way to test whether or not you are using the correct pronoun is to ask how you would write the sentence if the name were omitted. You'll notice in the incorrect example, her and Sally are going to come with us. If you removed Sally, you would never say, her is going to come with us. To correct the sentence, you should say, she and Sally are going to come with us. Most of us, at some point in our academic career, have heard a teacher say that you should never use the word you in an essay. This is not entirely correct. You is a pronoun that directly addresses the person reading the text. If your intention as a writer is to directly address the reader, then you would use the pronoun you. For example, you should always check your email when you arrive at work. The intention of this sentence is to directly address the person reading the sentence. One refers to a generic person that could apply to anyone. For example, one should never ignore symptoms that could indicate a serious illness. This does not apply strictly to the person reading the sentence, but to any person. Be sure to look at the essay and maintain parallelism by using whatever the essay uses. If it has used you throughout the essay, maintain that. If it uses one, then follow the existing pattern. Verbs. There are only two types of verbs, action and linking. The type of verb in a sentence determines the sentence pattern. Because of this, it is essential that you are able to identify the verb in a sentence. Action verbs, as the name implies, show action, but remember that not all actions are visible. Words such as think, feel, and believe are action verbs, even though they are not visible actions. Linking verbs connect subjects to linked information. While there are many action verbs, there are only 8 linking verbs: is, am, are, was, were, be, been, and being. Action verb sentence pattern. As you see in the example sentence, John cooked Mary dinner. John is the subject because he is the actor in the sentence. Cooked is the action performed by the subject, so it is the verb. To find the direct object, ask who or what after the verb. What did John cook? John cooked dinner. Therefore, dinner is the direct object. To find the indirect object, ask to or for whom after the direct object. For whom did John cook dinner? He cooked it for Mary, so Mary is the indirect object. Linking verbs sentence pattern. Linking verbs connect a subject to linked information. Linked information will either describe or rename the subject. In the first example sentence, you see, Mary is a teacher. Teacher renames Mary. In the second example, Mary is nice. Nice describes Mary. Note that in both sentences, you have a subject, a linking verb, and linked information. Simple sentences can be combined to form more complex sentences, so it is common to have both patterns present in the same sentence when you create compound sentences. Why you need to know sentence patterns. Sentence patterns determine punctuation. A simple sentence is called a clause, a group of words with a subject and a verb. A complex sentence may consist of several clauses. When you go to the store. Notice, you is the subject, go is the verb. John will go with you. John is the subject, will go is the verb. And if you need help, you, subject, need, verb. He will help you carry the groceries. He, subject, will help, verb. So you'll notice, in one complex sentence, we have 4 separate clauses. Being able to identify clauses will allow you to know how to correctly punctuate a sentence. Passive and active voice. Linking verb sentence patterns should only be used if there is no way to write a sentence with an action verb. When ideas that could be written in the action verb sentence pattern are expressed in the linking verb pattern, the sentence is said to be written in passive voice. In the example sentence, you will see, "The cake was baked by my grandmother." This is incorrect because grandmother is the one acting, baked is the action, and the cake is receiving the action. To correct this sentence and put it in active voice, you would need to phrase it, "My grandmother baked the cake." You'll note in the corrected example, the subject precedes the verb and is followed by the direct object. This is a correct active voice sentence pattern. Verb tense. Verb tense refers to the time expressed by a verb. Most of us are familiar with past, present, and future tense. In addition to these, most standardized tests will include past perfect and future perfect. Perfect means that something has a completion. Past perfect refers to an action that was started and completed in the past. Future perfect refers to an action that will be started and completed at a definite time in the future. Consider the example sentences. Past perfect. John had been team captain during his junior year. Had been indicates that John is no longer captain of the team this year. In past tense, John was team captain during his junior year. We don't know whether or not John is still the captain of the team. It leaves the question open-ended. In present tense, John is team captain. We know this is happening now. In future tense, John will be team captain. We are left with a vague and undetermined time at which this will happen. Future perfect gives a clear and definite point by which John will have completed the action. John will have been appointed team captain by the start of the new season. Will have been shows us that there is a clear and definite time frame in the future when this action will be completed. Adjectives and adverbs. Picture an elephant walking through the zoo. But, whatever you do, don't picture a small purple elephant with an umbrella walking loudly through the zoo. What happened to your mental picture when I use the words small, purple, with an umbrella, and loudly to describe the elephant and its actions? Most people will change their mental picture and visualize what is being described. For this reason, we call the words that we can use to describe things modifiers. Modifiers change our mental picture. There are two types of modifiers, adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives modify nouns and pronouns. Adjectives answer the questions, which one, what kind, and how many. Degrees of adjectives. The degree of an adjective refers to the number of things an adjective modifies or compares. Positive adjectives are used to modify a single thing. Comparative adjectives compare two things. Superlative adjectives compare three or more things. You'll notice in the example, the positive form says the cake was good. The comparative form says it was better than the cake last year. The superlative form says it was the best cake that I've ever eaten. A common mistake is thinking that the superlative form shows stronger feeling than the comparative form. However, this is not the case. The degree of an adjective is determined strictly by the number of items in question, with no regard for how strongly the writer feels about the issue. You'll notice in the second example, between the blue car and the red car, I think the red car is fastest. This would be incorrect because you're only comparing two cars. The correction would read, between the blue car and the red car, I think the red car is faster. Adverbs. Adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. They answer the questions how, when, and where when modifying verbs, and they answer the question to what extent when modifying adjectives and other adverbs. Adjective-adverb confusion. Adjectives and adverbs are not interchangeable. Adjective-adverb confusion is a common error on the test. The example sentence reads, "You played real good in the game last night. The other team played bad." Real and good are adjectives, words used to describe people and things, not actions. To modify the action played, you would need to use adverbs. You played really well in the game last night. The other team played badly. Really, well, and badly are adverbs. These can be used to describe actions. Splitting verbs and infinitives. Verb split error. Incorrect. I will confidently go into the meeting. The verb will go should not be split with the adverb confidently. The correction, I will go into the meeting confidently. Infinitive split error. I will need to quickly leave if I get a call from the hospital. The infinitive to leave should not be split by the adverb quickly. Correction, I will need to leave quickly if I get a call from the hospital. Double negative error. Example, she can't hardly hear from where she is sitting in the back of the room. In this sentence, can't and hardly are both negative. To say one can hardly hear means that one is unable to hear. To say that one can't hardly hear means that they can actually hear very well. To correct the problem, fix the double negative. She can hardly hear from where she is sitting in the back of the room. Modifier errors. Incorrect example. The color used in the first painting are brighter than the second painting. We should be comparing the colors in the two paintings, but the way the sentence is written, it appears that we are comparing the colors in one painting to the whole of the second painting, not just the colors. Correction. The colors used in the first painting are brighter than the colors in the second painting. Note that in the correction we clarified that we are comparing only the colors in the two paintings. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are used to connect clauses or to join other words in a sentence. A clause is a simple sentence with a subject and a verb. Clauses may be combined to form complex sentences, or they may stand alone as simple sentences. There are two types of clauses. An independent clause is one that can stand alone. In the example sentence, you will see, "It is raining." It is the subject, is the verb, and this clause expresses a complete idea. Therefore, it is an independent clause. A subordinate or a dependent clause is one that cannot stand alone. You'll notice in the example, we have the same sentence, "It is raining," but we add the subordinating conjunction since to the beginning. When I add since, it means that this clause is no longer able to stand alone. It is important to note that the clause still has a subject and a verb. A group of words that does not have a subject and verb cannot be a clause. The two most important types of conjunctions to know for standardized tests are coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions join two independent clauses. When joined with a coordinating conjunction, both of the clauses remain independent. You'll sometimes hear the coordinating conjunctions referred to as fanboys. This is the acronym standing for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Note that this is a complete list of all the coordinating conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions take an independent clause and make it subordinate. You'll see in the examples if, while, since, because, and although. These are just a few of many examples of subordinating conjunctions. When you're looking for a subordinating conjunction, look for a word at the beginning of a clause that makes it unable to stand alone. One important thing to remember in standardized testing is that a subordinate clause must be joined to an independent clause. It cannot stand alone. Punctuation and conjunctions. If the word "and" is being used to join two independent clauses, it needs a comma. Alex hit the ball, comma, and Sam caught it. If the word "and" is being used to join items in a list of 3 or more, each item that comes before the word "and" should be followed by a comma. I need paper, comma, pencils, comma, and notebooks for school. However, note that if the word "and" is being used to join only 2 items or actions, it does not need a comma. I will run to the store and pick up milk. Presentation on the test. When you see a comma in fanboy, remember that you must have an independent clause on both sides. This means that if I took away the comma in fanboy, I would still have 2 complete sentences. Tests will often place an unnecessary comma with "and" because it is easily overlooked due to the frequent pairing of and a comma. In the example, you'll note the incorrect example places an unnecessary comma before the word "and." I'm going to get meat, comma, and eggs to make an omelet. Because you're only getting 2 things, you do not need a comma before the word "and." In the correction, you'll note, I am going to get meat and eggs to make an omelet. No comma. In this same example, if you had 3 things, it would be necessary to use a comma. but as long as there are only two, no comma is required. Watch out for this common error on the test. Another common error on standardized tests is missing subordinating conjunctions. Consider the example sentence. He said the problem was there were not enough seats for everyone. There were not enough seats for everyone is a clause, a group of words with a subject and a verb. Unfortunately, this creates a run-on sentence. To correct it, you need a subordinating conjunction. He said the problem was that there were not enough seats for everyone. By adding that, I've created a subordinate clause at the end of my sentence and corrected the run-on. Punctuating subordinate clauses. If a subordinate clause is at the beginning of a sentence, use a comma. Do not use a comma if a subordinate clause is at the end of a sentence. Sometimes, when a subordinate clause interrupts a sentence, you need to put commas around it. Please note that the sentences on the slide are examples of each use of a subordinate clause. It is very important to remember how these are punctuated when you take a test. One of the most commonly missed errors is the error in the second sentence where people will place a comma between the independent and subordinate clause when the subordinate clause is at the end of a sentence. This is an understandable error because many people think that the sentence looks too long and needs to be broken up. Remember, unless you have an absolute reason based on a grammatical rule that you need to use a comma, do not add commas simply to break up a sentence, especially when it ends with a subordinate clause. Prepositions. Prepositions are words that begin prepositional phrases and show both physical and non-physical relationships. The first set of examples we will look at are prepositions that show physical relationships. The phone is on the charger. On the charger explains how the phone physically relates in space to the charger. My shoes are under the bed. Under the bed explains where my shoes are in relationship to the bed. You'll note in the second set of examples the relationships are not physical. For example, John is a member of the band. This is Mr. Smith, with Smith, Barnes, and Jenkins accounting. Although John may not be playing in his band at the moment, he is still a member of the band, and while Mr. Smith may not physically be with the other two members of his accounting team, he is still with the company. These prepositions show belonging and association rather than physical relationship. Presentation on the test. Prepositional phrases act as modifiers and can never contain the subject and verb of a sentence. When you are looking for the subject and verb, eliminate prepositional phrases to help make the sentence more clear. Often, test makers will place a prepositional phrase between the actual subject of the sentence and the verb. Beware of this trick. In the incorrect example, you'll see, the counselor for senior students were busy creating schedules. If you looked only at the underlined portion, students were, it appears to be correct because the plural pronoun students is right before the plural verb were. We know that this is incorrect for senior students is a prepositional phrase. It cannot contain the subject or the verb of a sentence. Therefore, we have to look for the actual subject, which is counselor. In the corrected sentence, you'll see the counselor for senior students was busy creating schedules. In this case, counselor was singular subject, singular verb. Interjections. Interjections are words that show strong emotion. Their use may not reflect a literal meaning. Words such as wow, ouch, yikes are good examples. Other examples include many of the slang words that we use to express anger or surprise. These words usually precede a sentence and are followed by an exclamation point. They are not part of the grammatical structure of the sentence, but are simply interjected to show the writer or speaker's feeling. Tone and word choice. One important thing to remember is to match the tone and word choice of the passage. If a passage is written using formal language, you need to maintain the formal tone. Consider the following example. The causes of the American Revolution are complex, but they may be primarily categorized as a desire for local governance and political independence. However, other stuff did contribute as well. In looking at the answer options, other factors, other drama, other junk, or no change, we have to consider which one best matches the tone of the passage. Notice that stuff, drama, and junk are all slang or informal. Factors is the only option that maintains the formal, academic tone of the essay. Punctuation. End marks of punctuation signal the end of your sentence to the reader. End marks include the period, the exclamation point, and the question mark. Periods are used after statements, question marks after questions, and exclamation marks after interjections or sentences that show strong emotion. Punctuation in a sentence. The following punctuation marks are used within a sentence: the comma, the semicolon, the colon, the dash, and parentheses. Comma. The comma is one of the most commonly used and frequently tested marks of punctuation. Beware of the pause rule for commas. Remember that no standardized test would use something as vague as "put a comma where you pause" to determine someone's academic future. There are clear and absolute rules for comma use. If you learn them, there will be no guesswork in determining whether or not a comma is needed. The easiest way to remember the 4 comma rules is to remember that there are 4 separates and 1 connect. The 4 separates are separate intro material, separate non-essential information, separate items in a list or series, and separate reversible adjectives. The connect means to connect 2 independent clauses with a comma and a fanboys conjunction. Remember, the fanboys are your coordinating conjunctions that, when used with a comma, can join independent clauses. Separate intro material. Adverb as intro material. Soon, it will be time to leave. In this sentence, soon is an adverb at the beginning of the sentence, so it should be followed by a comma. In the second example, we see a prepositional phrase as intro material. On the table, you'll find a variety of snacks. In the third example, we see a subordinate clause as intro material. After we have dinner, we can watch a movie. Note that the subordinate clause begins with a subordinating conjunction after. We is the subject, have is the verb. Whether you have an adverb, prepositional phrase, or subordinate clause, all of these should be followed by a comma. Ending material. Ending material does not require a comma. Consider the following examples. Adverb is ending material. It will be time to leave soon. You'll notice that when soon was at the beginning as introductory material, it required a comma. However, when it is flipped to the end as ending material, it does not. In the next example, you'll also see a sentence that looks familiar. You'll find a variety of snacks on the table. Notice that on the table has been flipped to the end of the sentence. When it was introductory material, a comma was required. However, No comma is required when it is ending material. Finally, a subordinate clause is ending material. We can watch a movie after we have dinner. Notice that if after we have dinner was at the beginning, it would be followed by a comma. However, when it's placed at the end, no comma is required. Note, intro material can usually pass the flip test and be flipped to the end of the sentence to become ending material. If it is flipped to the end, you do not need a comma. Separate non-essential information. Non-essential has nothing to do with the importance or the relevance of the information. Even information that is non-essential must still be relevant to the topic of the sentence. Non-essential information often interrupts the flow of the sentence to provide additional information about words or topics. Consider the two following examples. My dad, who loves to play golf, is going on vacation at a golfing resort. Mary, a dear friend of the family, will be joining us for a golf game. You'll notice that non-essential information is usually an aside that gives the reader more information. I could completely remove the words who loves to play golf or a dear friend of the family, and the sentences would still make sense and would still be grammatically correct. Names and titles. If a title is given before a name, you do not need a comma because it is not an interrupter. Consider the example. Senator John Smith is going to be at the dinner. If you give the name and then the title, it is considered non-essential and an interrupter. Therefore, it must have commas. John Smith, our senator, is going to be at the dinner. Notice in the second example, our senator has commas because it renames John Smith rather than giving a name with a title. Non-essential versus ending material. Sometimes non-essential information can be at the end of a sentence. If this happens, put a comma in front of it and the period after it. You can tell the information is non-essential because it can't be flipped to the beginning of the sentence. Consider the following example. I was very surprised to see my old friend, Alex Johnson. Note that Alex Johnson can't be flipped to the beginning without changing the meaning of the sentence, so it is non-essential and requires a comma. Consider the second example. We will be meeting for coffee in the morning. In the morning, we will be meeting for coffee. Note that in the morning can be flipped, so it is ending material and does not require a comma. Also remember that introductory material always requires a comma. This is one of the key differences in introductory and ending material. Separating items in a list or series. Any list of 3 or more items requires commas. Lists of 2 items do not. Consider the example. I need to buy bread, milk, and eggs. Note that there is a comma after bread and milk. In the next example, Mr. Smith is going to Scotland, England, Ireland, and France on his vacation. You'll note that any list with more than 2 items requires commas after each of the items that come before the word and. In the third example, you'll note, I am going to run, lift weights, do pull-ups, and stretch at the gym. Whether my items are actions, or places, or things, anytime you have more than 2 items in a list, you always use commas. Separate reversible adjectives. Adjectives are words that modify nouns and pronouns. Some have a definite order and are not reversible. For example, adjectives that deal with size and color. We would never say, hand me that blue big bowl. We would say, hand me that big blue bowl. In this situation, the adjectives are not reversible. If the adjectives are reversible, you separate them with a comma. Consider the first set of example sentences. The house was on a winding, narrow road, or the house was on a narrow, winding road. Notice that winding and narrow can be reversed without changing the meaning of the sentence. In the second set of example sentences, we read, they bought a beautiful, luxurious car, or they bought a luxurious, beautiful car. Notice that beautiful and luxurious can be reversed without changing the meaning of the sentence. If adjectives are reversible, it is necessary to place a comma between them. Connect two independent clauses with a comma plus fanboys. Note, if you connect two independent clauses with a comma but leave out the fanboys, it is considered a comma splice and is incorrect. Review. An independent clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb that does not begin with a subordinating conjunction. Consider the following example. I want to order pizza. Alice wants to grill burgers. To combine these, I would use a comma and a fanboy. I want to order pizza, comma, but Alice wants to grill burgers. In the second example, we read, Mike wants to go to the museum. Steve wants to go to the aquarium. To combine these, I would use a comma and. Mike wants to go to the museum, comma, and Steve wants to go to the aquarium. Semicolon. A semicolon is used to join two independent clauses. Most often it is used when the clauses are related to the same idea. Consider the following example. Some people prefer writing on paper. Others prefer typing on a computer. These sentences can be joined with a semicolon. Note that the word after the semicolon is not capitalized and that the group of words on each side forms an independent clause. If one side does not have an independent clause, you can't use a semicolon. Colon. The colon is a way of saying to a reader that more information or explanation is to follow. One instance in which colons can be used is when there is an explanation or definition. Consider the following example. I love baseball, the American pastime. In this sentence, the American pastime is defining baseball. A colon can also be used before a list. I need several items, pencils, paper, staples, binder clips, and erasers. Notice that the list in question explains what items are needed. A colon can also be used before a quote. Patrick Henry once said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Note, never use a colon after a verb or a preposition. Colons are like saying to your reader, "Let me explain." You don't need to use a colon after a verb or preposition because your reader is already expecting either a direct object, linked information, or the object of a preposition. Parentheses and dashes. Parentheses and dashes, like commas, are used to set off non-essential information. You'll notice in the three examples of this sentence, three different methods are used to set off the non-essential information. First commas, then parentheses, then dashes. All of these are correct. The important thing for you to remember is that sometimes non-essential information can be lengthy, and often test makers will only mark one end or the other for you to address in a question. Be sure that you look at the opposite end of the non-essential information, the end that you can't change, and make the end that you do change match. Dashes. Dashes can also be used like semicolons to separate two independent clauses. Consider the following example. I love to cook. I just don't like doing dishes. You will not be asked to choose between a dash, a semicolon, and a period because this would be a matter of preference. The test will never force you to make choices that come down to preference. For every question, there will be one and only one correct answer. Combining sentences and clauses. There are three options for combining independent clauses. Number 1, use a coordinating conjunction, comma plus fanboys. I am going to the store, comma, but John is staying here. Number 2, use a subordinating conjunction. Although it is raining, comma, we will still have practice. We will still have practice, although it is raining. Remember, when you use a subordinating conjunction, if the subordinate clause is at the beginning of the sentence, it must be followed by a comma. If the subordinate clause is at the end of the sentence, no comma should be used. Finally, you may use a colon, semicolon, or dash. I am going to the store, semicolon. John is staying here. In this particular example, John is capitalized because it is a proper noun. However, it is important to remember that unless the word following the semicolon is a proper noun, it is generally lowercase. Common errors. Run-on sentence. Two independent clauses are joined without punctuation separating them. Consider the incorrect example. I would go with you this weekend if I could. I have to work. To correct this, you would use a comma and a fanboys conjunction. Correction. I would go with you this weekend if I could, comma, but I have to work. A comma splice occurs when two independent clauses are joined with only a comma separating them, but the conjunction is omitted. I would go with you this weekend if I could, I have to work. Notice in the correction, I would go with you this weekend if I could, comma, but I have to work. It is necessary to use the coordinating conjunction, not just the comma. Beware of commonly confused words. It's, it', means it is. For example, it's a beautiful day. It's, without an apostrophe, means belongs to it. The truck needs to have its oil changed. Its apostrophe does not exist. However, you will very often see it as an incorrect answer option on standardized tests. Remember, when you see this option, it can immediately be eliminated, increasing your chances of finding the correct answer. Parallelism. Parallelism refers to making parts of a sentence or parts of an essay match, either grammatically or structurally. We are stretching, running, and we will lift during practice today. Because the sentence uses stretching and running, the third action should also use the same form, so you should say lifting to make it parallel. We are stretching, running, and lifting during practice today. Parallelism at the sentence level. Consider the incorrect example. Mr. Smith said that the decision should be based not on opinions, but they should base their decision on facts. Now consider the correction. Mr. Smith said that the decision should be based not on opinions, but on facts. Note that the correction uses the parallel sentence structure for both ideas rather than using a phrase for one and a clause for the other. Conclusion. Remember that English grammar is based on a clear set of rules. If you learn the rules, there is no guesswork. You don't have to rely on how it sounds because you will know for certain why words, sentences, and marks of punctuation are used in specific ways. On the exam, remember that every question on the test has one and only one right answer, and that the answer must be based on a specific, predictable set of rules. If you learn the rules, you will master the test.